Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. We're back again on our pandemic projects, trying to do one of these a day until we all beat this thing, and trying to keep everybody entertained while our first responders try and keep everybody safe, and our essential personnel try to make sure we have everything we need to get through this. So special shout out to the first responders and essential personnel. Thank you for all it is that you're doing to try and keep all of this somewhat normal in the middle of all of this craziness. We really do appreciate all of your efforts and all of your hard work. So today I'm going to do a Shakespeare. It's the 2250, I guess number 2, version 2, ball bearing reel. This is a nice reel, just a little sluggish, but I did this one in the pandemic project preview the other day. The only difference between this and that is that I stripped the line off. And that's just a reminder to a lot of folks that if you have a reel that you're doing an annual service on, please give rid of the line. It serves no purpose trying to stretch the value of the line by going an extra year only to have it be brittle, or the UV damage on it, or the stretch on it, and lose the fish that would have been one of your pride and joys to catch. So get rid of the line at the end of the year when you do your annual service. Alright, so we're going to take this apart. We'll find out what it's made of. We'll try and clean up whatever the sluggishness is. Sluggishness generally happens for two reasons, either dried grease or no grease. But everything else on this reel seems functional. I have a bail that clicks, I have a reel that turns, I have a shaft that's going up and down, which is all part of the tests that you should do when you're looking to acquire a reel. And as I had mentioned on the preview to this, I have a buddy that looks out for some old reels every now and then, figuring they'd be good projects for me. So he puts them in a box, and when he gets a few of them, gives them to me to do just that. So that's where this one came from. All right, let's take the spool off first. Looks like we just got a lot of dirt in the spool. We'll go in underneath here, check the drag washers out a little later. A little bit of dirt underneath too. I'm going to just give that a quick clean. I'm going to use some purple power for that. It's a concentrated degreaser. If you're going to use it, I probably should do what I have here. Just put a glove on your hand. Somebody told me that one of the chemicals in that that purple power is lye. You really don't want to have that stuff around. I haven't checked it. I'm just going on what they said. But you know, that doesn't hurt to take precautions. Does a nice job cleaning it up, that's for sure. And just want to get that off. There's a little stubbornness here on the top, probably from wet line, so I'm going to use some steel wool for that. Just kind of run it, make sure that it's smooth. You don't need your line catching on it if you can avoid that. And it seems like there's a little bit on the bottom too, so let's go ahead and see if we can't work that off. Yep, we got that off. Very good. All right, we'll come back later and we'll look at that drag washer. This is, I'm guessing, a 60s reel. I can't say for certain. I always get a little bit confused when reels start getting up in age there, but I seem to remember my brother fishing one of these, and it was about the 60s. Also another telltale, you have this water guard here. It's almost like a pipe cleaner, but you'll see the one tag sits in here and then it runs in a groove coming around there. That's for a seal for against the inside of the rotor here. And as you can tell, seal wasn't working that good because we have some dirt and stuff that's accumulated in there. We'll come back and clean that out in just a moment. We're going to take that rotor off. It says single ball bearing on it, so I assume it's the rotor ball bearing. So let's pull the side case, see what we have. Now, I don't have the schematics for this. You know, I've talked about that as always being something that you would like to get, because the schematic is a burst diagram of a reel, and it'll give you an idea of what's inside. And this time around, we're kind of just being adventurous here. I don't have the schematic, so what serves very well is taking pictures. Now, I'm taking pictures in the video, but taking pictures along the way tells you how the pieces and parts came off, and more importantly, if you get stuck, it's a reference point for you in terms of parts orientations, or what came off first, and so on. So I recommend, you don't have to take the video, but I recommend that you do take things like a still photograph either with a digital camera or with your cell phone or whatever. But take those pictures. That way you'll be able to get yourself back on track if you get a little lost. There's 2 screws holding the axle shaft on, so we're going to go ahead and we're going to take those 2 small screws out. You'll notice as I'm doing this that I have a parts tray behind me. It's simply the bottom of a milk jug, but you know, I recommend a single place where you're going to put all your pieces so that when you go to reinstall, you know where to find them. That one works for me. I'm kind of a big picture guy. I put it all together. Some folks like to use a mat where they line up the pieces and parts in the order that they took them off. That's okay too. Whatever works for you and whatever works best, I would encourage you to do it. But have a system so that you can easily find these when you go to reinstall. With those 2 screws out, we should be able to pull the axle shaft out now, just like that. It's a little tight. That's probably one of the things we were talking about, lack of grease, even though there seems to be a bunch of grease on here. And you'll notice I'm wearing a protective glove kind of for that reason. Not only that I was working with that one oil, but just there's generally greases and the like on here. And after working on a lot of reels all day, Lord knows what you have. So I like to wear that. I recommend that you use it. That choice is optional to you. All right, we just got a bunch of dried and coagulated grease on this. This is a nice old style reel. It's got a metal case, so we know it's before the graphite cases came out in the 80s, that's for sure. And in this case, this kind of looks some kind of an alloy, maybe a bronze or brass, or I don't know, brass. It's kind of a reddish color. I don't know if that means copper. I kind of would think that it wouldn't be copper, but who knows. And then we're just kind of cleaning up here, getting that old grease out using some scrapers and the like. You can see how it's dried in here, and a lot of times that's just an indication of why the performance bogs down. If you have dried grease in this channel here that I'm cleaning out, then your stud isn't going to travel freely. It's going to bump back and forth, and that'll slow down the performance of the reel. Okay, so we've taken that out. One of the things I like to do before I go any further, you'll hear that anti-reverse is on right now, and I like to flip that off. Maybe that's one of the problems with this reel. It's not flipping off, interestingly enough. Oh, there you go. Hard enough to do. We'll have to oil that later. But I like to flip that off so that when I go to remove the main gear, I'm not disturbing the anti-reverse lock. Okay, we're going to come up top now. You need a deep socket for this. I'm not sure if this is a 13 or a 14. We'll try. That's the 13. It's probably the 14. And it's even bigger than that. So let's see what else I have over here before I run. Try and get this off to another size. Yep, we're going to have to shut the video off and get the right... Oh, I got one. There you go. We don't have to shut it off. This is the 14 millimeter, so I'm not quite sure what I had on the other one. But the 14 millimeter seems to work. If you turn it one way and it's not going, try turning it the other way. There you go. So we have a reverse thread on this one. So I tried putting a little pressure to remove it in a normal counterclockwise method. It didn't work so quickly before I went crazy trying to pull or push that thing off. Just try the opposite direction. You should be able to move that up now. I have a little collar here that's impeding things. There we go. Pull that up. Now we have some dirt in here, so I'm going to flush this. I'm just going to use a spray. I'm going to use WD-40 as a general degreaser. Make sure that the bowl is clean. This is what that little pipe cleaner is supposed to keep out, intrusion. One of the problems with these cupped rotors, and not just with Shakespeare, but just about any cupped rotor, The problem is that this reel has no place to flush. So when salt water or contamination gets in there, there's not a lot of draining points. The only draining point actually is where this little trip lever is here. So it tends to accumulate in some of the recesses. That causes a problem. Notice the washer that came out of the top there. And I noticed this one here, it's got a little bit of rust on it and the like. Scrape that off, but I'm going to make sure that we give that a good bath as well, and just set that off to the side. I'm going to put this back in there so that I know that's where that goes. I'm going to come over then to the ball bearing. Remove the collar here. Again, pay attention to the orientation on this. We have a little metal strap here that's going to be the trip for the bail, I'm sure. There doesn't seem to be any particular side where that works, but I'm noticing that this wire, or this part of the stud for the trip, is to the back by the handle, so that when I go to reinstall, I want to make sure that that's the way I put that in. And again, pictures along the way is probably a good point to take a picture. And a picture along the way will help you with that in terms of when you go to reset this. Alright, we then have a pinion and a main gear. That came out relatively easy, surprisingly. I'm going to take this, I'm going to flush that bearing with WD-40 first, and then we're going to come back in and we're going to load it with some fresh oil. And then what we'll do here is we're going to remove the handle. I probably would have done better to leave the main gear in while I did that. So let's just go ahead and put the main gear in to hold the teeth of that. We'll remove the handle, take the main piece out, and then we can push the main gear through. And again, remember what we had there. We had a an anti-reverse in the off position, and you want that in that off position. Good place to take a picture as we go in to clean some of this excess grease in that off. Notice that anti-reverse dog. Now this one's held on by a C-clip, so that's not going to pop anywhere, but notice that you have a spring that goes between those two holes, and that's important. If it became disconnected, or if you needed to replace that spring, or if something else was inoperable with it, then you know after you take the picture how it has to look when you go to reinstall. So I always encourage folks to please take that picture. That's experience speaking. I've spent too many times trying to figure it out when the picture would have solved it for me pretty quickly, and I just I rushed through it or whatever, didn't take the picture, and then got stumped until eventually I figured it out, or went and got the schematic, or did something else. That case is nice and clean now. You can tell we've got some dried grease on this side. I have no doubt that that was contributing to the poor performance. So I'm going to get that stuff off of there. Going to run a little steel wool on the piece here. You can tell we've got some pretty dried grease and stuff up top here. That I'm sure is another part of this sticking. Okay, well, I've been on quite a tear lately. My battery packs just seem to die. But you can tell we're getting most of that stuff off. It's a nice solid piece. There was some built up. I'm thinking it's dried grease. There doesn't seem to be serious pitting to that, which is good. And we're just going to work on that a little bit more. Do what we can to shine that up. Well, it's feeling smooth. There's some discoloration on there. That's just going to be part of its history, I think. All right, we'll just wipe that off. There's a little bit of grit on there. Okay, we'll come back over here now. We've had that bearing soaking, and most of that, it just appears to be some dried grease on that. Certainly on the back side we can see that. So we're going to clean out what we can of the older grease. Now generally speaking, I oil bearings, so that's what I'm going to do here. There is some grease in there. I don't doubt if it's factory grease at this point, but I prefer to oil it, and that's what we're going to leave that with. I'm going to come over here, make sure that we clean up the pinion gear. It's a beautiful pinion gear. Has the dried grease in the channel here. Let's get that out of there. I'm using a pick for that, metal pick. You can use an awl, you can use a little scraper. I guess you can soak it for some times in some solutions to get that dried grease done. This seems to work pretty good. And then I'm going to scrape down through each of these extended teeth, because there is dried grease in here. And again, as you talk about what's deteriorated the performance in this reel, well, that's some of it. The dried grease dries the channels. It makes them more narrow and harder to kind of crank through. Overall, the reel is in good condition. The parts do not seem worn. If dried grease is the biggest issue, then this thing should be a champ in a short period of time. Alright, we're just about clean now. A little bit of elbow grease. And then what I like to do, you can see there's some fragments still lying on there, so the last piece of this, I like to just grab a little wire brush, kind of run it through the pieces. That pretty much gets it all done. Alright, so that's a way to clean them up and restore that little pinion gear, and then we just have a little bit going on the bottom here. See if we just can't get that off. There you go. So we have a nice gear cleaned. So the best thing to do right away, since you have it cleaned, is let's go lube that. I'm going to use fishing reel grease. That's all I recommend for fishing reels, is grease that's made for them. This is Penn Precision reel grease. You don't have to use Penn or Shakespeare or Abu. It doesn't matter whose reel grease you use, in my opinion. Just use fishing reel grease. If you do that, you won't get in trouble. Alright, we've oiled that up. This spins like a champ. Let's go ahead and put this back on. Oh, we want to get the main gear in first, so got to remember the sequence. Again, if you had taken the pictures, you would have realized that you took the main gear out after you took the pinion gear out. So let's check, make sure all the teeth are uniform. Look at it that way, look at it this way. I'm noticing as we're doing that there's a little bit of stuff stuck in these channels, so we'll do the same thing with the wire brush. Doesn't look like anything severe, but it does look like there's stuff in there, so let's get that out of the way. There's no bends. You want to check the peaks this way, and you want to check the orientation this way. Make sure that there's no chips or bends, cracks that would cause any kind of whining or performance issues on there. Get that up good, and then make sure you get grease on the inside, because that's where that crosswind block is going to ride as well. With that done, then we can go ahead and, oops, one more piece. Let's get the grease on that shaft where we had some stuff congealed. Now we can put it back in. And that came in a whole lot better than it came out. Now we can install the main pinion gear. I'm going to go back and grab our little plate. Okay, with the bearing installed, then let's go ahead and install the collar. We remember that this goes to the back. We also remember we had this little piece of metal here, and this little piece of metal actually belongs underneath the collar. And if you had any questions about that, you could go back and look at it. It's hard to tell on this because both sides have got that little stamp impression, but it does belong underneath. So when you go to reinstall, make sure when you're lining up your holes that you also have this metal spot in that one location there. Take a little time to do this. There we go, we got that. So now I'm just going to set that by the screw. Easy enough to want to put it on top as opposed to putting it on the bottom, but this one belongs on the bottom. And that, I guess, will deflect on that the trip lever. Alright, let's get this one in. And one more. So right now I'm happy with everything. It all cleaned up. We were able to get rid of any of the dried grease. We have a a ball bearing that's nice and functional. We've got very strong metal parts in this reel. So I'm thinking this one is going to perform like a champ when we get done just giving it the TLC of the new grease and oils and the like, and that it should do very nicely. Okay, and then we've got this shaft is up now, so let's go ahead and put the rotor back on. Put that little tie down. Come into my bucket and get the nut. Remember, this is a reverse threaded nut, so you're going to put it on in a counterclockwise method. And you're going to have to change the orientation on that. So that when we go to tighten, you tighten it backwards, give it a spin. Look at that, it's spinning so freely right now. Beautiful. All right, we've taken the axle shaft. We're just going to rub that down a little bit here. I see there's a little bit of dried grease on the top of the collar there. If we're doing this, we might as well get it all off there right now. That's probably from just sitting for as long as it has. There we go, we're clean with that. Do the same thing, grab a little bit of the blue grease. Let's get that in. There's two holes where those screws are going to go for the crosswind block, so let's clean that crosswind block up. Last little bit, we kind of did that earlier. Let's get grease on the inside of that channel there so it works nicely. The rest doesn't need grease, so let's put that on the stud. In case that was hard to see, we'll kind of do that again. We've got the stud there, and this rides on top of it. This little leg rides to the corner where there's a channel. We can put some grease in that channel, just let it slide a little bit easier. And now let's go grab that axle shaft, looking for those two holes. Now you can't mess the orientation up on this one. You can mess it up on some in terms of where that which the direction this block is, but in this case it's kind of hard to do there. Just make sure you have your little screws to get started. We have a double block. If you want to just use your pick to line one of these up and hold it like that, then the other screw should go in. You just need the other screwdriver. That'll go in there, and then you'll be able to pull the other one and be set with that as well. So overall, pretty impressive 1960s, early 1970s reel. The metal case gives some of the indication on this one in terms of age. The ball bearing, they've certainly slimmed down the ball bearings since, but that's okay. Overall, just a nice genuine reel here. Okay, and then we can put the case back on here. We have the 3 case screws. They were all the same size, so they can fit in any hole. I don't tighten the case screws down till I get all 3 of them in. That's just to make sure that we don't have any misalignment of the case. So I'll just kind of snug them, and then when I get the last one in, come back on the tightening of it. Something I've learned generally from experience. All right, we'll tighten that one down now. Got them all in, come back, and I'm just going to reverse the order of the tightening, making sure that they're all tight. All right, and we can put the handle on. That'll be our first indication that we've either done it right or we haven't. Before I go too much further, I'm going to put a drop of oil onto the shaft here. There we go. I'm I'm also going to put a drop of oil in the seam and a drop of oil up top here. Okay, so let's go up top then and check out the drag washers, see what we have. They're held in by a flat bar, kind of a C-clip. Just take your pick or a small screwdriver and get it in from the side. And then let's pull this drag stack out, see what we have. Okay, so the first one then is a hard washer, followed by a plastic washer, followed by a hard washer and a metal washer, another fabric washer. Just trying to keep the sequence on this right. Followed by another series of these washers. Okay, very interesting doubling up here with these plastics, but apparently that's the way it goes. And we'll take a cotton swab, make sure that the channel inside of the spool is clear, and then we can just reinstall. Now, hard washers don't need to have any kind of oil or that on them. These seem to have some oil on them, which is kind of interesting given the age of the reel. Then it was a plastic, then it was a hard, and it was the first of the metals, followed by a hard and a plastic, followed by the eared washer, which goes in the slots, followed by the last of the hard washers, and the last of the metal washers, and then the C-clip, where I guess you press it all down and you should be able to probably get this in with a little bit of hand strength. So let's try that. Get it in the groove, and thank goodness I still have a little bit of hand strength there. And that's your drag stack. So to line this up now, you have one more washer laying on the bottom here. Okay, we'll just tighten this up then. And I'm also going to put a drop of oil onto the strip mechanism for the bales. You don't need to remove bale springs and the like if everything is working fine. Leave the bale alone. Just give it a little bit of oil. And look at that. What a beautiful reel. Works nicely. Make sure that our drag washers are tight here in the stack. There you go. They tighten down beautifully. They can't move that spool. So what you want to do if you're just going to store this or not going to use it for a while, back that off. Take the pressure off those drag washers. You don't need to compress them. And there you go. That is your servicing of a Shakespeare 2250, second generation, I assume, with the double Roman numeral. It's a ball bearing reel. You saw that, a beautiful big one. This one's a nice, smooth operator. Quality reel from the, assuming 1960s, maybe early 1970s. Just put some line on it and go take it fishing. So I hope you've enjoyed that. If you did, please like it. If you have questions about any of the particular reels that we're working on, please leave them in the comments. If you have a reel that needs to be serviced and you're not up to servicing it yourself, I do the servicing by mail, and if you contact me through my email on the business card that follows, I'll be happy to provide you with the details. So this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Thank you for watching.